All right.
Okay, here we go.
A little faux pas there.
Ready?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Paul Nichols. Thank you for taking the time to look at this show. I wrote this show. It's taken 4 years. We did a lot of research on the show. The show is about 3 great jazz artists: Lester Young, Charlie Parker, and John Coltrane. The name of the show is Theatrilogy. The show takes about an hour and a half. There are 3 poems written on each personality. The first poem in each trilogy of poems deals with the beginning of the person's life, the second poem, the middle years, the third poem, the last years. After each poem is a small epilogue which kind of summarizes what each life was all about. Each trilogy is going to be introduced by a pretty long poem that kind of highlights what was going on with jazz prior to that person's emergence on the scene. Be a lot of names, a lot of quotes. Everything is done in poetry. We're expecting to use 3 dancers who will dance out the life as the poet recites. 3 musicians who will play the kind of jazz that's being talked about in the poetry, and 3 poets, each of which who will take a part of the play, a trilogy of the play. For example, one poet will deal with Lester Young, one poet will deal with Charlie Parker, and one poet will deal with John Coltrane. It's expected that you just take a look at it, see what you think about in terms of production for the show. We have our own ideas. After you've reviewed the play, we'd like to get in touch with you to see what you think about it, and we'd like to share ideas. Again, I want to thank you for taking the opportunity, taking the time to look at what we've done, and we're looking forward to getting back in touch with you. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Who are you? And where do you come from? You're asking me to put money into it, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell them.
Who are you? Where did you go to school? Where did you? Okay.
I'm a schmuck.
Yeah. Okay, but you understand why too.
Ready?
Yeah, you can go anytime.
Oh, okay. My name is Paul Nichols. I'm a writer. I went to school at some of the best universities on the planet. Let me start that one all over again. My name is Paul Nichols. I'm the author of the show you're getting ready to see. I studied English and American literature at Harvard College. I then went to Stanford University and studied broadcast management. Shortly after finishing my graduate courses in California, I worked in Honolulu at a cable station, then in Columbus, Ohio at another cable station, and then in Atlanta, Georgia at another cable station. After they sold each cable station I worked at, I came back to Boston and started a magazine, which I have since stopped and am producing this show. The show is called Theatrilogy. It's about 3 jazz artists, Lester Young, Charlie Parker, and John Coltrane. It's taken 4 years of involved research, both in talking with people who knew the personalities and reading all the literature available on the personalities. We encapsulated their lives in 3 poems on each person. Each segment of poems is introduced by a poem that highlights what was going on in jazz prior to this person's emergence on the scene. For example, with Lester Young, we talk about jazz in New Orleans before Lester Young came into the picture. And with Charlie Parker, we do the same thing, and then likewise with John Coltrane. We'd like to present this poem in a kind of different format. We'd like to use 3 dancers, we'd like to use 3 poets, and 3 jazz bands. Of course, the dancers would include tap dancers, jazz dancers, modern dancers. The poets, of course, would simply be poets who are able to identify with the personalities they're speaking about. Of course, the jazz bands would have to be able to, in the styles we're talking about, New Orleans to boogie woogie, all the way up to avant-garde jazz. We think it's a nice concept. We've presented it here at Charlie's Tap. You'll see it in a few minutes. The audience response was pretty good. We're interested in having you produce the show. We're interested also in discussing the production with you. We have our own ideas as to what we think.
No. I'm sorry. That part's not necessary.
Okay.
They know that. That's why you're sending them a tape. Okay. That, we want you to produce it, and you said that in the first 2 minutes. Okay. That's pretty good. Right from the start, that was a nice piece.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to say about it? We can just keep going because I just put it together afterward.
Okay. Let me take a look at this. We're also interested in using visuals. Any photographs, any still photographs that can be mounted and projected, phased in and phased out with the poetry. We're interested in doing something like that with it also. We're trying to. The concept here is much visual because the poet is simply talking about these lives. It's not going to be as exciting without a dancer, without the jazz band, without the visuals to help keep the audience focused on what we're talking on the play itself. It is not a comedy. It's a tragedy. Let's face it, the lives we're talking about were all tragic. So there won't be many laughs, but by the same token, it's a factual, it's a historical production, and it's very educational. People who have heard it have remarked on the fact that everything that was discussed in the play has some meaning. We think it's a winner. We think it's a winner, and we thank you for taking the time to view these tapes, and we're looking forward to hearing from you in the near future. Thanks again, and happy viewing. Bye-bye.
You talked about research a couple of times. What did you do for research, actually? You talked to people on the streets, and you went to libraries.
Talked to as many people as I possibly could. In fact, one of the more interesting people that I talked with was a guy named Marky Blair. He played with John Coltrane. And we sat, we talked, we played music together, a little trumpet. He played saxophone. He played with Coltrane here in Boston at Storyville. He remembered very distinctly John Coltrane on the stage, on the bandstand. He remembered him. He had John Coltrane stay at his house with him. He toured a little bit, and he talked about John's personality being a very open kind of person. And we tried to, anytime we talked with someone, we tried to infuse what they were able to tell us about the personality that we couldn't find in the libraries and the books into the poem. I talked with another guy out at the 1369 Club, again here in Cambridge, Mass, who had played with Charlie Parker. And one of the things he was completely astounded about with Charlie Parker was Charlie's proficiency on that instrument. He said Charlie would be standing first of all, it looked like a ragamuffin who you wouldn't expect to play any kind of jazz at all. He'd be playing his horn into the wall, and then all of a sudden he'd come up on the bandstand, and before you know it, the whole audience would be in an uproar about what he was doing on the set.